Hey, Ben.
Yes, David?
You know what we're talking about today?
I have no idea. What are we talking about
We
today?
are talking about UPS.
Why are we talking about UPS?
Because that's logistics.
I'm confused.
Isn't that the commercial? Like the logistics commercial? It's like UPS, that's logistics.
Please don't sue us, UPS.
Instant romance. I mean, instant romance. But they can fold.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching Youth Ministry TV, brought to you by the Youth Ministry blog. My name is David.
And my name is Ben Fawcett.
I was very patriotic. My name is Ben Fawcett.
Well, you said we're going to be talking about the United Parcel Services. What's more American than UPS?
Parcel? Is that what it is?
I'm pretty sure it is. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Sounds very good.
Well, parcel is like mail, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
Parcels?
Yeah. So
Parcel?
I'm going to assume UPS, which is a great company and you should use them, stands for United Parcel Services.
We're gonna have to like call and get them to like sponsor the show now because we've talked about UPS like 3 times at this point.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. This is the UPS episode or the
Logistics. We're actually talking about youth ministry logistics. And so when I say the word logistics, what I'm talking about is numbers in youth ministry. That's right, numbers. Oh my gosh.
Oh, what?
We're talking about numbers. Everybody flip out. Everybody go crazy. It's not about numbers. It is about numbers.
But it's not about numbers.
It's not about numbers. It is about numbers.
It's like the most confusing subversive talk in like churches.
It's all ministry.
Right? It's all like
We're not about numbers here. Yeah, well, if those numbers are people and people matter to God, then we care about numbers.
Oh my goodness.
Mic drop.
Well, numbers are one of the only ways we can use as indicators nowadays. So yeah, that's not a gauge of your success or how obedient you are to Christ.
Or is it?
Or is it? But we are going to talk about numbers. Some of you guys have some rockin' Jeremiah style ministries out there, which aren't maybe so big in numbers, and that's okay. You're still doing the Lord's work. But then some of you guys have some really big ministries. Either way, whether you have 5, 10, or 300 students, there's still numbers there and there's still tracking to be done. There's still logistics.
Yeah, how are you being faithful with those numbers who are there, regardless if that is a large number or a small number? Yeah. And so more into that, we're going to be talking about how you are growing those numbers. Even if you have 5, how do you get to 6, right?
Yeah.
What new markets are you entering, right? How are you making sure that you're finding new students to bring into the fold of gospel community, whether that's large market or small market, right? And so along with that, not only how are you finding new markets, but how are you making sure that you keep the back door closed? How do you make sure that students aren't exiting your ministry because of something that you're doing?
Yeah,
right?
Retention's always a part of growing, right? You can't grow if you're not retaining your numbers.
Yep.
And I think the name of the game, what we're all going to agree upon, no matter what it comes down to, is that we want to make disciples of Jesus Christ. We want to multiply the kingdom.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about new markets, because a lot of times I think youth pastors get stuck and they lose sight of where they can find fertile ground that has not been tilled, that has not been plowed, where they can find students who have not been engaged with the gospel. They kind of get locked in to this, I'm just going to tell my current students to go and tell their friends to invite them to come to church, and that is their primary method for getting new students.
Yeah, and I think this is hard for adults and students, right?
Yeah,
this
it's not just student ministry.
The funny thing is I was talking to our executive pastor today, and we were just kind of mulling over some things, strategy in ministry, and this is one of the things we talked about, like, who is going to be the next great innovator in the American church context that really says this is how you can go out there and reach 80% of the unchurched of America.
Wow.
Which is hard, and that's we both agreed upon this, whether it's students or adults.
And if we could figure that out, we should write a book and make lots of money for the kingdom.
Yeah, because I think the mega church has like foolishly made us think like, oh my gosh, there's so many people coming to Christ at these mega churches, when really a lot of them are just church people switching over to this mega church, right? It's
Look how fast our church is growing by stealing from others.
yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about how to get into new markets, how to bring the gospel to some people and get them into our church so that we can make disciples. And so that's one thing you did. You had a really fresh take on that when you first came to Fusion Student Ministries, like 4 years ago, right? And so we've kind of ramped that up since. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, one of my big frustrations, I've probably talked about it here on Youth Ministry TV before, one of my biggest frustrations growing up was my lack of impetus to be a Christian and to model Christianity and to bring my faith into the school. And so what I did was I lived a very Sunday and Wednesday life and then a rest of the week life. And so what I did on Sundays and Wednesdays at church had very little bleed over into what I was doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and on the weekends. And so when I started in youth ministry here at Life Point Church, one of my biggest pushes was how do I get students to identify themselves as pastors, preachers, and missionaries to their schools? And so my big vision was how do we get them starting Bible studies in their school so that when they do a Bible study on their campus at 8 o'clock in the morning, some of the students who attend that Bible study, that might be the only church that they ever attend. Because their family might be from a different faith persuasion or something like that, this little Bible study might be the only connection with Christ that they have throughout the week. And so think about that as a new market. How are you getting your students to live out the gospel in their schools? Maybe it's a Bible study. Maybe it's just bringing all the football players, volleyball, baseball, whatever team you're on, bringing them all together to pray before your sport, and they're seeing you be Christ at school in your everyday context.
Yeah, and we live in a really diverse area too, right? We actually share a parking lot with a Hindu monastery, right? Or Montessori, I'm sorry, Hindu Montessori.
It's a Montessori school, but on Sundays, there's like a Hindu temple thing going on there. Yeah, it's crazy.
So in our area, it's really diverse,
pot,
but they're all going to the same schools. And that's what I liked about you bringing in and equipping students to learn how to go be bold and start these Bible studies that are really about opening up the doors and saying, hey, come and just hear about the gospel. Come and learn who God is. Because whether it's somebody...
And not just come and hear, but equipping them to go and tell.
Yeah, right? And to find community. Yeah. And to find community. And it's so much more comfortable for a non-believer to hear it from somebody who they think is on their same level and not somebody who's preaching at them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've seen our ministry grow, our Sunday attendance grow because of these pocket Bible studies that the students have been empowered to go start and challenged to go start and have gone and started. And it's not always creating a new Bible study either, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it's partnering.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so that's one area, is sending your students out. And then a new market that I think is far under attacked, if that's the correct verbiage I should use, is really seeking how can I use the current parents in my ministry to influence their parental friends?
Yeah.
Is that
We're neighbors.
Neighbors.
We're neighbors.
They're neighbors. And so we have a couple that helps out here in our student ministry, and they're like best friends with everyone in their neighborhood.
They're socially connected.
Yeah, they're just best friends with everybody in their neighborhood. And there's been 2 families begin to come to our student ministry, students coming to our student ministry because of the connection with the parents. It wasn't even on a student level, it was on a parent level. And so because we try to be intentional with engaging our parents in relationship, helping them understand, hey, this is a partnership. I'm not supposed to disciple your child alone. You don't have to disciple your child alone. We're going to somehow come together and do this together, right? We're going to journey together. And in that, who are the parents that you interact with at school, on the baseball bleachers,
baseball bleachers
that you can bring and invite, and you see, wow, their family would benefit from being part of a gospel community. So
lots of those type of things happening. And we had dinner with one of our awesome dads to one of our students, and he was just talking about how he started his second small group.
Yeah.
Right? And he's finding commonality in, do you have a child that's around the same age of mine? And this is a non-believing. They brought in a non-believing parents into this. So hopefully the next stage is that student will transfer over and start to come into the church as well. So that's, reaching in the schools, but also, like you said, taking advantage of the parents is very key.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do when the newcomers come? Like, how do we start processing the newcomers and then getting the newcomers hopefully to the point where they sincerely place their faith in Jesus Christ and get saved and then go on to baptism?
Back to logistics, yes. And so when you breach those new markets, students come to your church. One thing that youth ministry is bad at is logistics, and that's why we're talking about this. is we think
it's
if
so
they just show up, then we're like, hey, come back again. Whatever your name is, whoever you are. That's why we call everybody pal and bro,
buddy.
What's up, buddy? Because we don't take the time to actually get to know them and to hunt them down after they attend. And so we have a tear off on our bulletins. We should have brought up a bulletin.
Yeah.
And so we do a bulletin every single Sunday morning because we have our own student ministry service. And so we have a bulletin with a little tear off that says, let's get acquainted.
Maybe that's one of the goodies we can hand out, is we can send you guys.
We'll give you
some of
away
that.
our template for our bulletin. It's like a trifold. It's pretty fancy.
It's sweet.
And so you can link to the paper. I don't know what paper we use, but that's important for printers, right? And so we'll let you know that. But on that, we have a little perforated? Is it perforated? Perforated little sliver that says, let's get acquainted, and it's got their information. And so they'll fill that out, and it's literally name, email address, all that, what grade you're in, all those details, what school you go to. And at the bottom it says, how can we pray for you? Are you a Christian? Do you want to get baptized? Like all these different things that they can check. Well, even if you collect that information, you still have to follow up with that information. You can't just take it and be like, thanks, they put it in there, and then nobody does anything with that. And so what we do is if they just fill out their name and number and their email, we will take that, I'll hand it to our small groups coordinator, and she goes into MailChimp, which is the mail email service that we use. She enters the emails into MailChimp. She then takes the phone numbers and enters them into SYM tools. Shout out for Simply Youth Ministry Tools. We'll have to get them to sponsor along with UPS. We're just pulling everybody in. And whatever paper company we use for our paper. Let's see how many sponsors we can get with this one episode. Okay.
I'm totally down with that.
We then enter their phone numbers into SYM tools so that we can text them, because obviously students send a lot of text messages. And so what we have to do is make sure that once we get that phone number, that we're actually texting that student and saying, hey, thank you for coming. I hope you had a great time. Let me know if there's any way I can pray for you. I noticed on your card you said that you had a test this week. Just want to let you know I'm praying for that test, right? And so we actually have to do the due diligence of following up with those who attend. This is easier, just to be frank, it's easier when you're a smaller ministry. When you're going from 6 people to 7 people, you're going to definitely want to follow up with that seventh person who showed. You have to.
There's no choice.
It's more difficult when you have a ministry of 200 plus and some kid slips in, writes down on a card that he's new in almost illegible handwriting, and you're like, is that a 7 or is that a 9? And you get frustrated, you're like, I'm just not going to text him, I'm not going to follow up. If he can't write where I can understand, I'm not going to follow up.
Well, and let's face it, most of us don't like data entry.
Wow.
So find yourself a rockin' volunteer, like our small group coordinator, she's rockin'. So find yourself a rockin' volunteer that doesn't mind doing data entry. If you can't, then unfortunately, you're going to have to just get into the mode of recording, tracking, and following up. Recording, tracking, and following up consistently.
Absolutely. And then what we don't do a good job of is like 2 weeks later. Like, do we follow up, be like, hey, were you here last Sunday? Just checking in how things are going. Like, I think we should come up with a more sound strategy for how we're going to follow up. Not just that week after they attend, but the following week, like 3 weeks after, something like that. If you're a part of any big company email list, you get like not just a welcome email, but then there's like another one like 3 weeks later, right? And so follow up with your students. Get those new students integrated into whatever systems you have, both email, texting, and into the larger church database like we have, which is ACS. And we still have to enter that into the larger church database. And so that's the front door, is getting students integrated. What we also have to look out for is the back door. Why are students leaving your youth ministry?
People on the way out.
Do you even know why students are leaving your youth ministry?
There's no way you're going to know all of them.
Yeah.
But there are sometimes those rare moments where you can, if you get a hold of the parent or the student, where you can get some honest feedback. Some of them are just going to slip out. They were unknowns, and they were never going to reply to you anyways. And those are just the ones you've just got to say, okay, unfortunately, for whatever reason, things didn't work out. But there are some other ones that you can earnestly get a hold of and see what's going on.
And obviously, the more you're pushing your students to get into small groups, the smaller that you can make those groupings and the smaller that you can make those trackings, the better. And so we have our small group leaders. Our small groups meet in host homes around the city throughout the week. And so we make our host homes fill out an attendance sheet of who was there and who was not there. And to make our jobs easier, we then encourage them, hey, if you notice this one student came once and they're not coming back, follow up with them.
Yeah.
In other church contexts where you do like a Sunday school, you'll have a roster, you'll have a role. How are you encouraging your small group leaders, your Sunday school teachers to follow up with those students who aren't there?
Yeah.
Why would you not say, hey, this girl hasn't been here in 5 weeks. I wonder how she's doing. What's going on in her life? Why hasn't she been to church?
And get your leaders to have their students also, their fellow students, reach out to them.
Even better, yeah, because adult follows up, yeah.
I'll be honest, the number one reason that I'm hearing are typically, at least with the older students, I'm not so sure about the younger students. With the older students, it's, I don't necessarily believe in Jesus Christ. My parents make me go here. Plus, it's not just that, plus they're disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have like really a friendship circle there, a social group, or any type of community group or anything like that. It's typically very, very lone wolf type people that are disenfranchised, not because they're not invited into things, but because they choose to be disenfranchised.
There are some students who just alienate themselves. Now, I'm not trying to sound mean, but they do. They're more reserved. They pull back. They're the ones who on Sunday mornings will be standing off to the side, not engaging with anyone.
Yeah.
And so how do you get your students, your high capacity, very energetic, very loving, outgoing students, to go and befriend them, and not just for the sake of befriending them, but for the sake of saying, your presence here matters.
Yeah, yeah. That is such a huge thing to cultivate that area where people do feel like they do matter, where they're not just a lonely shadow on the wall that nobody really cares about. Plus, they've already got the mentality of the only reason why I'm here is because my parents dropped me off. So just being aware of how to combat those things, and like you said, employing your leaders to get personal and to try to contact, and then getting your students to do the same thing too. You're gonna have a lot better chance of not just finding out why people are leaving, but retaining those people.
Absolutely. And so these are just a couple of things that we've been thinking about, not just talking about numbers and why numbers are important, but wondering, okay, God, you've blessed us with these students. You've given us time and responsibility with these students. So how are we being faithful in that? How are we making sure that we're using them as preachers, as missionaries, as connectors? How are we using our small group leaders as connectors? How are we being faithful with the flock that God has given us, not letting that one stray off? Right? But forsaking the 99 and going after the one.
Yeah,
right?
Not being content with saying, this was a hard person to reach, it's okay that they're God. I mean, that they're gone. But instead really looking towards the mentality of what you just said. God, you put this person here, I'm going to do my best to reach them. Do everything in our power where we can make sure that they know that God does love them. Jesus did die on the cross for their salvation, and he rose from the grave because he wanted to give them life eternal. And so that's always the message going forward. And so again, it's not about numbers, but it is about numbers.
It's not about numbers.
But it's not.
It's about numbers.
Yeah, sure it is.
It's not about numbers.
However, in order to make it not so much about numbers, but about numbers, you need to record, track, and follow up.
Yes, and so the question we want to leave you with, this is what we want you to write on the YouTube, right below this video.
On the YouTube?
If you're watching this on some other platform, go to the YouTube, look up the Youth Ministry blog, and you'll find the Youth Ministry TV under the Youth Ministry blog on the YouTube. And down in the comments, what I want you to do is tell me two things. One, what new markets are you finding students in?
Yeah.
Right? How are you finding new students and aggressively going after them? And then two, how are you following up with students? Where have you found success? Is it sending them a Sonic gift card? What are you doing to faithfully follow up with them? And so please, please, please comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching Youth Ministry TV, brought to you by the Youth Ministry blog. For the show notes for this show and all the details and all the million things that we've mentioned, you can go to www.theyouthministryblog.com/logistics.
Not UPS. Logistics.
That's logistics. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day.
See you next episode.